You learn to stop blaming and actually take like personal responsibility, but without shame. You learn to forgive yourself and forgive others. Those are both like very correlated. You learn to actually hold space for somebody else and see them for who they are.
Welcome to Transforming the Toddler Years, a Core 4 parenting podcast for conscious, cycle-breaking parents ready to turn toddler tantrums into teachable moments. Hi, I'm Cara Tyrrell, a lifetime lover of littles, mom to 2 grown and flown girls, and an early childhood educator. Through the show, I teach you my collaborative parenting methodology for nurturing your little human's mind, body, and spirit. Because how you connect and collaborate in the first 5 years is how you raise happy, healthy kids who grow into the best version of themselves and find true success in school and life. Do you have a strong-willed child? Today's episode is for you. I am welcoming Wendy Snyder from Fresh Start Family, and boy, do she and I have some synergy around strong-willed kids and meeting them where they are, understanding who they are, and using our conscious parenting strategies to really help them feel good about the next steps. Wendy is a mom of 2. She's a certified parenting educator and a family life coach who inspires parents to learn and grow through connection-based positive parenting strategies. She's the host of her own show, the Fresh Start Family Show, and the founder of Fresh Start Family Online. This episode is really special. I hope that you walk into it with an open mind and the willingness to shift a perspective, because that's what it takes when we've got strong-willed kids. Wendy, I am so excited you're on the show today to talk about strong-willed kids. We can't get enough of this topic. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat today.
So, strong-willed kids. What is your observation? What is your definition of a strong-willed kid coming off COVID, coming out of the pandemic? We got a lot of big behaviors. We have a lot of emotional regulation struggles and the word no floating around a lot coming back at us as parents. What is your definition of strong-willed?
Yeah, so strong-willed kids to me are the ones that you can just really sense it from a very young age, where you can just feel they have this incredible spirit about them that, in my experience, shows up really, really young. So for our daughter, we really aren't exaggerating when we say we could feel it from birth. She was an emergency C-section. We joke that she was just happy as a clam inside her snuggly spot and did not want to come out into the world. And really, thank God she's alive. Thank God she made it. I made it, because it was quite traumatic. But she had such a purpose in this world, because she's really the reason why I'm a teacher and why I'm where I am today. But you could feel it from the beginning. And you could feel it when she was a baby, the way she would stink eye someone at a Christmas party if they were like, thought they were going to entertain her or try to hold her. She would just very strong. She actually had colic too. So that was interesting. I always joke that if I were to go back and get my master's degree, I would want to study if there's any correlation between colic and strong-willedness, because it was quite intense with her as a baby. And then obviously as she became toddler, adolescent, it just carried through. It was always there, her huge desire to feel powerful. And then I will say that there's other kids who are maybe a little bit more easygoing, mellow, but then they hit those power surge stages of life, which is usually 2 to 6, and then tween and teen years, where it's just that developmentally appropriate. You can expect it. They're going to be really searching for more independence, more autonomy. That's like where you can just expect it, right? And so if you have a strong-willed kid, it's going to double up at those times. But these are the kids who classically are described as rebellious, defiant, cocky, contrary, difficult, resistant, disobedient, all these types of words. And what's so fascinating is a lot of times, I just presented about this yesterday, actually, a lot of times when kids are young, we will see those traits as bad and we'll describe them with those type of words. But then as people get older, we see that a lot of times the world's most incredible leaders have the same traits. They're just described in a different way. So instead of, contrary, fixated, resistant, all that kind of stuff, we use words like decisive and determined and persistent and authoritative or confident, gutsy, committed, resourceful. A lot of times they're the risk takers, the innovators, the experimentalists. A lot of times they're highly competitive. So just like there's like all different types of puppies, right? And dogs, I'm like a big dog person. There's just all different types of humans. And the strong-willed human is a very unique, incredible design. And the more we can see them as perfectly designed with just a strong need for mentorship, because they are usually our next generation of leaders, the easier life becomes because we're just not so like in a war trying to make them change, thinking they're broken, but instead just learning how to work with them, just like you would raise a cactus in your garden differently than you would raise an orchid.
Wow. Oh, there's so much goodness in there, Wendy. Hey, Mama. Cara here, just hopping in to say how impressed I am by you and your dedication to raise a whole child who will be world and school ready. You know that parenting is a job, a job, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to know what you don't know. And that's what I'm here for. My Transforming the Toddler Years course is currently closed, but I am accepting one-on-one clients who are looking to make massive transformation inside their home. If you're feeling overwhelmed, disconnected, and that you're in survival mode all day, every day, but you wake up determined to be intentional, calm, and connected so that you can help your child thrive, I can help. Schedule a complimentary connection call with the link in the show notes to share your parenting journey and your current struggles. Let's see how we can work together to help you transform the toddler years. I told you before we started the show that there's a lot of synergy between us, and that was a slight assumption based just on reading your bio and your family history. Now I know it for sure.
Yeah.
My daughter, Claire, she's technically our middle child. She was the product of a traumatic pregnancy in the sense that her sister before her passed. She was a 40-week and 1 day stillborn baby. And so I was just a neurotic, anxiety-filled, negative energy holding human, a vessel for the 38 weeks that she was inside me. And literally, like you were saying, from birth, I just knew, I was craving that nurturing connection, that skin to skin, that extended breastfeed. And she wanted nothing to do with that physical connection. She was all autonomy. Wrap me up tight and put me down. I'm good. Thank you very much.
Exactly the same with Stella. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's interesting.
What a journey it was for me to, from that exact moment, realize, because this was, of course, my first time bringing a living child, breathing child home, this is not actually about me anymore. I did it. She's here. Now I need to honor who she is and learn everything I know about her tiny little character that's about to burst so I can meet her needs. And that never changed all the way up through those toddler years. Woo, was that girl, all those amazing, wonderful things that you just said.
Yeah.
And the traditional parenting strategies did not work. Not a one.
Yeah.
I had
Same
to go rogue. And it didn't necessarily have a name back then. It was just, oh, this isn't working. I will be doing something different.
Yeah. Oh, my story is so similar. Yeah. I mean, but I was trying all the classic stuff. Like, I did not get the memo that she was not broken until she was like 3.5. And thank God I got the memo then, got invited to a positive parenting class at her preschool. But before that, I mean, I was working in corporate. And so we had this amazing nanny at the time. And when she was with Stella, like you could feel Stella's strong will, but it's like, her with the nanny, which was like an angel. We loved her so much, still to this day, good friend. They like didn't butt heads like her and I did. And then as soon as I decided to stay home, thinking it was going to be like this lovely, beautiful, we live at the beach and oh my gosh, that's when really the poop hit the fan because as soon as I was with her full time at 3.5, I realized, oh, and of course I had a new baby and that baby had colic also, just like the first did. And it was just like a big storm of poop. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. And at the time I was like, something's got to be wrong with her. I watched every documentary from how young do they diagnose kids with bipolar to like, can kids get possessed? Maybe she needs an exorcism. Like, what is wrong with her? And then I think silently, I was saying to myself, something's got to be wrong with you, which I discovered later is a big theme in my life, which so many of my clients struggle with too. Like the shame aspect that really keeps you stuck in like destructive patterns and relationship destroying behaviors that come out in parenting and marriage and all the things. But I know back then looking that silently, I was like, there's something gotta be wrong with me because I should be able to control this kid. And then add to that I had every person around me basically saying like, don't be afraid to smack that kid. Here's a book that'll teach you how to use a switch on her. And in my faith circle, it was just like creepy how much was being recommended that you just hit her. That'll solve everything. And I was like, you haven't actually, I've tried that. And she comes back harder, which is so rad. It's like one of my favorite things about her that she just did not submit to that fear and force. And she came back harder. And I have so many stories of her throwing calming kits down the stairs over her head or like just freaking out if I tried to spank her. And so, yeah, she's amazing. But thank God I got the memo. And it was about right before she turned 4 that we did the complete 180. And as soon as I started to learn this new way to see her, new way to speak with her, new way to interact with her, new way to discipline her, she just naturally started to change and behave so much better. And then the coolest thing was I started to change and the way I saw the world, the way I operated when I was triggered. Still has taken me a long time to get out of some of those behaviors, but just the way I was able to see her. And then that's what led to finally the relationship getting strengthened. But it took us quite some time to get to that place where I was really seeing her for who she was. Because in those first few years, I was just caught up in kind of that old school rhetoric and paradigm that something's got to be wrong with this kid if she's not obeying like she should be. And it was just incredibly destructive. And then add to that she was this very independent kid. It's funny, your story, because Stella slept she cried the first night we had her home like all night, had a horrible nightmare at like 6 a.m. It was the worst night ever. And then finally we put her in her own crib at 6 a.m. and she just happily went to bed, never was next to us in our room. Those little cute little things next to the parent. Not Stella. She was like, put me in my room, has never been a huge one for hugs and physical. So yeah, our stories about how we got here are so cool to hear, right? Because they're just so beautiful and just part of us. And yeah, that's the deal.
So talk to us about that aha moment, that perspective shift, because seeing our kids for who they are when they don't jive, when they don't gel with the general population's idea of who they should be is a huge leap. It takes, like, there's those moments, it sounds like at that workshop, you were like, oh, okay. But then the intention to live in that space and continually view her differently. How did you turn that into a daily practice?
Yeah, I think it took some deeper healing that I unlocked. So, a big part of our work. So, I'm a parenting educator, but I'm also a life coach. And so, I got invited into a deeper healing weekend. It's a week program called Freedom to Be that I now teach within my own programs. And that's where I dove into like the deeper like root cause of what was going on underneath of me. That's where like the light got shined on that. And that's a workshop where we do a lot of like healing through feeling. And so you look at like, where are you blaming? And you learn to stop blaming and actually take like personal responsibility, but without shame. You learn to forgive yourself and forgive others. Those are both like very correlated. You learn to actually hold space for somebody else and see them for who they are. And so it was that weekend that actually like really unlocked everything. So I had been learning the strategies and seeing them make a difference with her and realizing that the tone I set in the house, really, she's always been my little mirror. And so now she's almost 17. And just still like throughout her whole life, I've learned to see her misbehaviors as just a mirror for where I am probably lacking a life skill. And now that we're in a rhythm with that, it's the coolest thing. And we have these giant stories of like healing and stuff that's happened for me just because she had a misbehavior, very different than the way traditionally a misbehavior is seen. But back then, it took unlocking some deeper healing to understand. Because I'll never forget the first time I did one of these weekend courses and I came home and like I had always like white knuckled the patient side, right? So it's like we teach something called a pause button, and it's like, hey, when the misbehavior comes your way, create a space between the stimulus and the response. In that space is your power to choose. We talk about Viktor Frankl's work a lot. And it was like always like, that's great. Like conceptually, of course you would pause. But the actual following through with that was, I was in a highly reactive state and everything was very justified because I was stuck in like blame cycles. So that was the knee jerk. Defensive, blame, she's the problem. If she would stop being so difficult, then I wouldn't have to yell. So that weekend when I unlocked that healing, I remember that that Monday we had like a pretty significant situation happen where she was misbehaving and I found myself like just naturally responding versus reacting without white knuckling it. And it had been because I did some deeper healing that weekend. And I remember I went into my bedroom, I had the baby, I nursed him, finished. He was banging on my door, freaking out. And finally I came out and I was like, I had calmed down. She had gotten over what we call the rainbow and like finally had like sat down. And she was only 3.5 at the time, but she was doing that like very like cry where they can hardly like you can tell they're like having trouble breathing. And she used to get rashes all over her face, the level of outburst she would have. And I opened the door and I just looked at her and I got down to her level and I was like, hey, honey, what's going on? And she was like, I'm just so mad. And in her little 3-year-old voice, she said, I'm just so mad. And I said, I can see that, but like, why? It was over a nursing stool that she wanted and I wouldn't give it to her. And all she said in that moment was, because I'm so mad. And I don't even know to this day, like if she really meant what I finally was able to read, but I like to think that it was like this very deep intuition within myself. And it was one of the first moments I ever saw my daughter for who she actually was. She was suffering and she was saying to me, Mom, I get so freaking mad. And I don't know why I get so mad, but I flip out and I don't want to get this mad, but I do. And so I am so mad right now because I feel like I can't control myself and I come out of my body and I have this rage. And so, but all she said was, I feel so mad because I am so mad. And I just got down on her level and I hugged her and we both were like sobbing. And I was just like, oh my God, you don't know how I get you. I am going through the exact same thing. Because in that season, I was like in this very reactive mode. And I just had been very blind to it. Like, again, I was blaming her, but really it was like I was the one setting the tone. I was the one freaking out if she wouldn't sit still at the dinner table. I was the one losing my cool, yelling, grabbing wrists, slamming doors. And there was a big part of me that was like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
And so here's my little girl at 3 that's like, I just don't know what to do. And I was like, we are together. We're going to figure this out. And you're not alone. You're not an alien. I'm not an alien. And it was really from that day forward that I was then able to see that her and I were basically the exact same. She was just learning the life skills at 3. I was learning the life skills at 33. But once we got on that path, then I was able to like really start to see, okay, when we have a hang up, I just got to like look at what's going on for me and work with her, but really we're together in this. That's what I think really broke things open for us. So it was unlocking a deeper healing and then combining that with the strategies, because the strategies don't work
Nope.
if you don't have that deeper stuff going on.
They absolutely don't. And I say that all the time when parents come to me and say, "Can you give me a strategy to fix that?" And I said I could, but it won't work.
Yeah.
There's stuff we have to do before it will work. While you were talking, oh my gosh, I was visualizing. I have this graphic that I teach called my trigger trap reaction cycle.
Oh.
And that is exactly what you were describing in action, right? The child gets triggered, the parent reacts. Because the parent reacts, the child re-triggers. Because the child re-triggers, the parent triggers up. And the cycle goes around and around and around. And if you can't find the exit ramp, it will not naturally come back to any type of regulatory center on its own. And just thinking about it feels so exhausting. Like, oh, here we go again and again.